Okay, she should be on in just a second. They're rebooting.
That's fine.
There you are.
Okay, Michelle, you there? Okay. You there, Michelle, or no? You got Ryan.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks.
Okay, so just wait for.
I had my webcam covered, so no hackers.
That's what I figured. So.
I'll be
Okay,
right.
so if Irene pops on, Michelle will get going. There she is. You ready, Michelle?
Yep.
Okay. I'll call to order the virtual meeting of the Budget Advisory Committee on Thursday, May 28th at 2 p.m. Roll call, please.
Chair Banther?
Here.
Vice Chair Hales? Here. Doddridge?
Here.
Kudos?
Here.
McCloy?
Here.
Ms. Hall? Here. And Mr. Bergman?
Good.
Here, okay.
Good. I do have to leave at 3:30 if we go to that time. So at that point, I'll pass the virtual gavel to Ms. Hales if we approach that. So thank you. All right, we'll do the approval of minutes first for August 8th, 2019, November 14th, 2019, and January 23rd, 2020. Do I have a motion or comments?
Motion to approve.
No,
Second.
please. Motion second. Roll call, please.
Mr. McCloy?
Yes.
Kudos?
Yes.
Doddridge?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hales?
Yes.
Chair Banther?
Yes. And now we have our favorite CPA's presentation, the fiscal 2021 proposed budget by Mr. Ron Herring.
Oh boy, I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it's been a while, guys. We haven't been together in a while. We put the book, trying to get all the budget books out to y'all. We've had trouble trying to send them because of their size. But hopefully y'all finally got all the budget books. I just want to make a thank you to Michelle Mims, the Assistant Finance Director, who's on the Zoom here, and Shane Smith, Budget Analyst. They've worked hard trying to put everything together on the budget books. But with that, I guess I'll go into my budget presentation. I tried to send that out to you all too, just so if you get a little advanced look at it and if you have any questions on it. But with that, I'll try to bring in my screen, share my screen with you on my PowerPoint. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the first meeting on the 2021 budget. I thought first I'd just sort of like a presentation outline. You know, with everything going on right now with COVID, I thought I'd go over the current year, fiscal year 2020, the financials. And then a couple of weeks ago, I thought about going back to see what happened during what they called the Great Recession of 2008. So I thought I'd go over what happened to the city back with that. And then get into the 2021 budget, and then a short little thing on the budget process timetable going forward, and then a little, budget advisory committee wrap up. One thing that's come back to me over the last few months, especially with talking to other cities, is nothing is certain. And, everybody, we're all finance directors are talking to each other going, what are you going to do for cuts? What are you doing next year for sales tax? I've heard from ranges from 4% cuts on the sales taxes to 40%, which might be a little bit more ultra conservative. But so the only thing I kept coming back to, a lot of the words I've been hearing is unknowns and uncertain. So that's why I sort of titled this thing, the only thing is certain is everything is uncertain. What has the city done so far? Just so if you don't know, the city has not furloughed any employees. All the employees are receiving full pay. Some of the financial concerns for this current fiscal year, revolve around sales tax receipts, which are the penny sales tax, the half-cent sales tax, and revenue sharing. The half-cent and the revenue sharing are part of the general fund. Property tax receipts have been a concern, but from talking to the property appraiser, we've got 96% of our money already this year. If anything, maybe there might be some delinquency. So we don't see anything this current fiscal year as far as any shortfalls in revenues this current year. For 2021, the budget we're working on, the assessments appraisals were done back in January. Talking to the property appraiser, he doesn't see anything for this budget year that we're working on, except maybe if there's some delinquencies. The big concern might be fiscal year 2022, because they're thinking all these businesses that they're working remote, or businesses that go under, we might have a lot of vacant commercial properties. So next year for the 2022 budget, might be a concern as far as taxable values going down. Getting into for the city, the financial effects through April 30th. When I looked at the monthly financials, most of them were all meeting budget. You wouldn't know anything is wrong, except for of course the theater, the performing arts center has been shut down, so we've lost about $60,000. Recreation fees, because the community center's been shut down, we've got about $77,000 in revenues that we're short. Golf course closed down from March 24th to May 6th, and that was a big time, and the weather was good, so we're down about $120,000 from last year. We've waived penalties on shutoffs and penalties, so it's about $23,000 a month in the water and sewer fund. And of course, interest earnings, we were doing good going up until January, February. We're still earning, a little over 2%. Then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, and right now everything is under 1%. And really lately, there's some things that are even less, like 0.50 basis points and less on some things right now. But fortunately, we invested in some stuff before the pandemic hit. So I think for this current year, we'll still meet budget on our interest revenues. Other financial concerns, besides one on the previous slide, is the basically getting back to sales tax. And between looking at all the cities, I've averaged out about a 15% decline in sales tax receipts for the last half of the year, for the last six months. As you probably know, that when the people pay their sales tax in March, we're not receiving that until May. So we're going to have 6 months for the last part of this year that we're going to see a shortfall on our revenues. A half-cent sales tax, and across the screen on the red, probably estimating about $123,000 this year. Revenue sharing about $69,000. The penny fund about $191,000. Now that's what I put in the presentation, but just yesterday we got information from the state that they're going back to the March 2020 sales tax collections, and the state is down 598 million from their estimate. That's about 25%. And yesterday we got our own May revenue sharing from our March receipts, and we're down $40,683 from May of 2019 comparing to, say, May of 2019. The half-cent sales tax is down $31,752 from May of 2019. And as I say below that, we're going to monitor the revenues monthly, and we may need to make adjustments in the budget if we see maybe it's worse than the 15% decline I put in the budget. Property taxes, like I say, we've received 96% of the revenues for 2020. The only thing is we're just throwing in there if there happens to be any delinquencies. And sometimes delinquencies may be caught up because the county sells tax certificates. So even if there is delinquencies, they might be sold in the tax certificates they do in June. And how does this affect? For the current year, it affects unassigned fund balance. I tried to just summarize here our unassigned fund balance at the end of last year, September 30, 2019, 8.8 million. We did the small business endurance grant, which is coming out of reserves. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the city did grants $1,000 each for the businesses downtown, local businesses, and it was a $150,000 grant. Electric utility tax, we were running below budget, but they did a rate reduction, but they said there is a rate increase, so we see that offsetting. That's why across from the electric services there, I have zeros across from there, so no change. The ad valorem, that's at $38,000 for delinquencies. Half-cent sales tax, $123,000 decline. Revenue sharing, $69,000. And the city charter approved an internal auditor position this current year, 2020. They're going out to hire somebody, so that $25,000 is 3 months of salary and benefits for that position. So what it gets down to is probably about that unassigned fund balance going from 8.8 million to 8.4 million. This is an estimate, a projection, going down 405,000 for this current year. I decided, they called it the Great Recession of 2008. It's thought I might go back and look at it a little bit. It started with the subprime mortgage crisis. The stock market fell, lost half its value. Unemployment rate went to 10%. There was a bank bailout, and Federal Reserve started quantitative easing. So I did a little history of the general fund revenues and expenditures. And going from the left side there, the blue bar is the actual revenues. The brown bar is the actual expenditures. So you can see that in 2007, the general fund revenues was $20,711,000. Then revenues went down $2 million to 2012, the blue line going down to the $8,896,000. What did the city do? The city cut expenditures. We went in and just held the line of expenditures, vacant positions we didn't fill. So we cut expenditures drastically. And then getting into, you can see we bottomed out at 18.8 million in 2012, and then revenue started to go back up until finally in 2015, we got to the same amount of revenues, basically back to 2007. So it took us about 8 years to get back to where we were back in 2007 at the 20,815,000. We built up some reserves when we cut the expenses. So that's why you see the brown bar above the expenditures above the blue bar for revenues from like about 2012 to 2017. We were using some reserves back then, but we also had some capital expenditures. We got money from the sale of a hospital land for $620,000 in a nursing home. So we're using some of those reserves for capital expenditures. And like I say, we finally got back to that 20,815,000 and 2 million in 2015. This next slide takes that same slide for the revenues expenditures, but also adds on the unassigned fund balance in the gray bar, and then the yellow bar is the fund balance minimum. The minimum's 20% of the expenditures for the general fund. And as you can see, we had the expenditure cuts, which it increased the reserves about 10.9 million, which was used during that period to help those help balancing the budgets between 2012 and 2014. And then from 2014 to 19, we've been able to maintain the unassigned fund balance at 8.8 million. Just the one other thing that sort of concerns me is trying to the unassigned fund balance. You know, the minimum fund balance is 20% of the expenditures, but expenditures are increasing, so the minimum fund balance is increasing. So I'm seeing the gap in between the unassigned fund balance and the minimum fund balance sort of getting closer together to there. But so that's just a little history I wanted to put together on what happened back in 2000 and with what they called the Great Recession and the history of the general fund revenue expenditures and unassigned fund balance. I would say if anybody's got any questions, just throw them out there and stuff. And this is what the city did back then in 2008. They held the line on expenditures. They cut unnecessary expenditures. We went to a 90-10 health insurance plan. Vacant positions were only filled if necessary, and I believe we had a committee to look at those and try to determine, okay, if a position was necessary, we filled it. If not, we just left them vacant. And there was no pay increases between 2009 and 2011. Not that we're going to, I just wanted to go back and look at the Great Recession. Not that we're going to have, I hope, anything like that right now. I try to tend to be more of a positive person. I'm thinking that, as soon as things get settled down, maybe we get a vaccine, that things will, I think from what I hear from listening to a couple of speakers, that especially Florida will come back quick as far as the Florida economy. I just want to take some of going back to still the Great Recession, but looking at some individual revenues. Here's what happened to property tax during that time. We had 8.1 million back in 2007. That's the blue line there, the actual revenues. The brown line I threw in there is if we got our average revenues is 2.61%. I just threw this in there to try to say, if from 2006 we averaged 2.61%, where would we be? So you can see how the difference is between going from 8.1 million and then we dipped down 1.5 million. We lost 1.5 million in revenues from 2007 to 2013. And then gradually by about 2017, we got to about the same amount of revenues that we had back in 2007. So 10 years later, we got back to 2007 amount of revenues. This is the half-cent sales tax, and it's same sort of, almost looks identical to the other one. You see the big dip on the blue line there in the revenues. The average for the half-cent is 3%. I just threw in the brown bar what we would have gotten if we just averaged our 3%. We didn't have the Great Recession. And as you can see, revenues declined by almost about 200,000 from 2006 to 2010. And then about 2006, we were back up to about the same amount of revenues that we had. I'm sorry, in 2014, we're back to about the same amount of revenues in 2006 at the 1.3, almost 1.4 million. The revenue sharing looks like identical as the other graph, just the blue line is the actual revenues for revenue sharing. The brown line is a 3% average. As you can tell, the revenues declined 125,000 from 2006 to 2010. And, round about, 2014, 15, we got up back to the same level. And the last one I did was a penny fund. Looks like I say it's identical to the other ones. They all did this. Blue line is the revenues going down from 1.9 million to 1.6 from 2006 to 2010. And the brown line is if we had a 3% average, trying to compare where we would have been. Like in 2010, we would have had like 500,000 more at almost 2.2 million in 2010. And then in about 2014, we were back to that 1.9 million that we had in 2006. So again, it took like about 8 years later until we got back up to where we were in 2006. And then I wanted to get into the proposed budget for 2021, enough of the Great Recession stuff, but, in developing the 2021 budget, it's not a very exciting budget, having to make the cuts. It's a challenging budget, trying to balance the needs of the city with the available revenues. Departments, they've always done a good job in maintaining their budgets and keeping them pretty lean, but it seems like this year we've had to make more cuts. I worry that we're making so many cuts, that, how it affects the operations of those departments. And for 2021, with the budget we've given you, we've tried to maintain the operating level at the same as the previous year or this current fiscal year, 2020. There's been a lot of capital cut out of the budget, but it's been put on what I would call a standby list, and that list is in the executive summary. But I say departments have entered their budgets. We developed the payroll, finance has. We've done the revenue projections, of course. We've balanced the funds. And no unassigned fund balance is used to balance the general fund budget right now, but it's a pretty lean budget. Just trying to go over the books you got in case you're not familiar with them. The big 3-ring binder with all the accounts, table of contents, revenues, expenditures, the justification, personnel schedules. You know, the table of contents is pretty thorough if you're trying to look for a fund or a department. On the report you got in that detail report, we added in 2018 and 2019 actuals, maybe to help your analysis. The executive summary, you know, it's a summary summarizing all that big old detail budget book. I just highlighted something new. In yellow, the executive summary called budget message. You didn't have this last year. I created it towards the end of last year for the commission. The pages 4 through 15 tries to summarize the different funds and what's going on in the funds. So that's, if you're going to read anything, I would probably go through that to try to get an idea of the what's going on in the budget. The other new area, I threw in a few pages on the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency, pages 70 through 76. Just trying to talk about the CIP part of the back of the book. I highlighted the 5-year CIP summary, pages 106 through 107. You know, if you're going to look for all the CIP projects, these are the big projects, usually over $100,000. Page 106 and 107 has a 5-year CIP in it. Highlighted down towards the bottom, it says all capital requests, pages 122 to 124. We put everything in these spreadsheets. So everything, not if it's CIP, capital outlay, if you want to see all the capital, it's listed on those pages there by fund and by department. I didn't highlight it below there, but capital requests not in budget on standby. This is everything the departments put in requesting, but we don't have it funded currently. But what we want to usually like to do is try to prioritize these things. So if funding becomes available, we'll put these items in the budget. I did a new third budget handout. It came, I think I sent it out yesterday or the day before. Staff helped really putting this thing together, but thought it might help in trying to understand the operating accounts, not personnel, not capital, but try to explain the history of them, the expenditures, and some explanations of what is charged of these things. Is I'm thinking that, you know, it might help you all in trying to understand them. I work with these accounts, so I'm familiar with them. So I thought that might be helpful. I think on the next slide, I've got this is point 31. If you look on the right, on the left side, point 31 professional services. And below it, we try to say, okay, this is account for engineering, legal consultants, and it goes by fund and by department. So if you're trying to find out everything dealing with professional services, it's on this spreadsheet. It'll give the 3-year actuals from 2017, 18, and 19. What we spent through March of this current year, the budget for 2020 and 21, and then on the far right, under main item, it tries to give what is spent across in those categories. And like I said, we did one of these spreadsheets, and it's in that attachment I sent out yesterday, the day before, and it's got every one of those operating accounts on a separate page. So hopefully that's helpful. Briefly, as you probably know, and I probably said this last year, the city has 30 funds. They're mainly either governmental funds, where on a cash basis, or they're business types funds, where enterprise funds, where the services are financed by user fees. So the governmental funds are the general fund, the special revenue, capital project funds. The business type ones are the water and sewer, sanitation, marina, stormwater, golf course, and water and sewer impacts. Sort of this, I guess, explaining the same thing, but here's a more detail. The special revenue funds are the gas tax, the impact fees, grants, law enforcement programs, special programs like public art, land preservation. Then the CRA fund under special revenue. Then the capital projects funds. Mostly annual street paving, sidewalks, brick and roads reconstruction. And then we have the Sidewalk Improvement Fund. Used to be called the Capital Investment Fund, but the charter changed that this current year. And it's now called the Sidewalk Improvement Fund. And it's just for sidewalks. Before, it could be used for streets and sidewalks. And then there's a penny fund, which you're familiar with, like all of our capital infrastructure is charged out of the penny fund, or public safety vehicles and equipment with a 5-year life. Everything that doesn't fall into special revenues or capital projects goes into the general fund. Now getting into the exciting stuff. The total city budget, highlighted in yellow on the left for 2021, currently is $62,105,042. It's a $1.9 million increase, or 2.98% decrease from the previous year. The general fund budget is $26.5 million. $486,000 increase, or 1.87% increase. Mainly the increase is due to health insurance. We budgeted 10%. The internal auditor position, which is new by the charter, and the paramedic positions that used to be funded by the SAFER grant. I don't know if you remember, there was 4 of them. The grant is over, it expired this current year, so we're fully funding those 4 paramedic positions out of the general fund. The water and sewer fund, $18.8 million budget. It's down $1.3 million, or 6.53%. It's mostly due to capital projects. We had more capital projects this current year, a couple larger ones, a little over $1 million each. One was Sea Breeze sewering, and the other one was some new water wells. Sanitation fund, $6.2 million budget, an increase of $830,000, mostly due to the waste management contract increase. And some capital. Since they're doing the Mears Connection Road there's some money in the budget for a scale house and relocating the scale out there at the yard waste facility. So there's $200 and some thousand related to the scale house and building out there. Stormwater fund, almost $1.8 million. It's a decrease also of $1.8 million, and that's due to in fiscal year 2020, we have the Pent Groves project budgeted for $2.4 million. And then the penny fund is not much different, just $111,000, but that's a wide array of projects that we have within the penny fund. So those 5 funds altogether are 90% of the $62 million budget. Getting into some revenue projections, trying to tell you how we go back and project the revenues. We do the 3-year historicals. We look at the 2017, 18, 19. Also compare the trend analysis for the current fiscal year through March and compare it to the March of the previous year. And also take into account anything that might be going on this year that we don't know about or might be new. And then also taking into effect, of course, what might happen, the uncertain effects of COVID-19. More revenue projection talk for the general fund. The property appraiser had a seminar last week. He said for Tarpon, an estimate so far is a little bit over 5%. I put it down to 4.5% in the budget, that 4.5% taxable value increase. I put it 4.5 because usually when the property appraiser says 5 or above, between now and June 1st, when he does his official estimate, it has never gone up, it's always gone down. So between now and June 1st, because there's an estimate, and between then and the actual certified values on July 1st, it's usually gone down. So to be on the safe side, I put it at a 4.5% taxable value increase for the budget. As mentioned earlier, hopefully there's not many effects because the assessments were done last January for the properties. So hopefully, if anything for this year, just maybe if there's some delinquencies. It's 2022 that seems to be the talk of concern of if we have some commercial properties and vacancies. Most other revenue projections in the general fund I've projected between 0 and 2%. And be a little bit conservative. Normally, some of these would be between 3 and 4% revenue projections. More revenue projections of the general fund. Some main decreases, of course, the sales tax, half-cent revenue sharing, 15%. Performing art ticket sales. And of course, interest earnings, projecting a decrease on the interest earning, basically, since we're earning, less than 1% now. Revenue projections, general fund continued. Electric utility tax and franchise fees, I did 2%. Usually they're between 3 and 4%. EMS and fire fees, they're by the county contract, what they pay us, they're at a little 3% increase. Building permit fees, I projected 2%, but it's down from that. We usually average 6% a year, so I budgeted at 2% to be on the safe side. And like I say, the revenues will be monitored monthly, so if we need to make some adjustments, we will in the budget. It's a long process now between now and September when the budget's finally approved. Getting into the enterprise funds, just talking about them a little bit. The major revenue projections, based on the approved rates for these funds. Water sales, it's already been approved, the water increase at 2.75%. Sewer sales 2.75 and reclaim 2.75. Those are in the ordinance already. The sanitation fund goes by the waste management contract, and it's by the CPI, which is 1.63%. But last year, Pinellas County, for the first time in years, started increasing the rates for disposal at their landfill. So last year was the first year. So this year, they're saying there's going to be a 1.7% increase for disposal on top of the CPI. Per waste management's contract, they can forward that increase onto the city. So the increase for refuse per the contract is 3.33% for residential customers. Recycling is just the CPI at 1.63%. And the curbside contractor rate will go from 4.36 to 4.43. And the curbside rate for refuse, I didn't see it because I think the little pictures are over, going from 11 something to 12.11. At stormwater fund, per the resolution, it's going up 50 cents per equivalent stormwater unit to 8.65. Trying to get into the major expenditure items and the increases that are in the budget. There's no new positions in the proposed budget except for that internal auditor position, which is full-time. There's no pay increases in the budget yet. And then going down below, the SAFER grant, that's at 4 paramedics, cost increase of $130,000, being in the general fund. That grant expired. As I mentioned earlier, there's the internal auditor position budgeted at $98,000. Health and dental insurance, we increased. We budget for 10% increases. We won't know the increase for a while. In fact, we're going out for bid. Maybe it goes down. But we've increased an increase of $388,000 on health insurance and almost $13,000 on dental insurance. For the retirement plans, the police and fire are defined benefit plans. And the actuary, tells us what we need to make as our annual required contribution. So for the police, it's $607,566. For the fire, it's $799,000 as the annual contribution. But the actuary says we usually pay the money weekly through our payroll. Once a week, we send them money during the week. We've always done it that way. But they've said if we want to pay it on October 1st, 2020, for the police, we can pay $577,000 instead of the $607,000. So we can save about $30,000 and meet our annual required contribution. For fire, we can pay $752,000 on October 1st, 2020, instead of the $799,000. And I can't see it because all the little pictures on the side there, but I think it's a savings of about $77,000, if I remember right, if we want to go ahead and pay it, which I think we're going to do, and pay it on October 1st, 2020. I've put it in the budget based on paying it on 2020. Workers' comp insurance, 10% increase, just an estimate, $44,000. Property liability insurance, another 10%. I guess I like 10%, so I put that in there, but that seems to be the average over the last 3-4 years, I think is how I came up to that. For the property liability insurance, a $73,000 increase. So the cost of the above increases is $883,484. So those are the main expenditures that, involving increases, and this is total city here. Getting into the CIP program a little, without putting all the capital projects on the screen, I think like I did last year, I'm just referring back to the executive summary, page one. I think I mentioned this before. The page 106, 107 shows all the 5-year CIP. Pages 122 to 124 has all the capital. Pages 125, 126 has the capital not in the budget to be prioritized if funding becomes available. I did want to show some of the bigger projects this year of the 6.6 million CIP for 2021. In the water and sewer fund, water pipe valve replacement, 500,000, manhole and sewer lines, 250,000, force main improvements, 250,000. The penny fund, roadway reconfiguration, Walmart and Huey, 750,000. We are getting a grant to help pay for that from FDOT. Police vehicles, 400,000. Brick Street and road reconstruction, 150,000. And then annual street paving and sidewalks, 180,000. So these are some of the bigger projects for almost 2.5 million of the 6.6 million in the CIP. Now getting to the general fund. The general fund budget in 2021 at 26.5 million. It's a $486,000 increase, or 1.87%. Mostly due to health insurance, just mentioned. The internal auditor and paramedics, I think I've mentioned a couple times already. This slide is just showing a summary of the revenues by the category: taxes, permits, intergovernmental charges for service. And highlighted in yellow on the top part, you can see that the main increase to help fund the budget is the taxes, mostly property taxes. 459,000 is in that category. And below that, in the brown bar, it's highlighted intergovernmental. That's where the sales taxes are. You can see it's decreasing 94,000. And then the next brown bar down below, highlighted in brown, is interest earnings, down 91,000. And then down, if you go to the graph down below, you can see that taxes are 54% of the general fund revenue budget. As you like to say, I always like to look at the top 10 revenues for the general fund. There's 77% of the general fund revenues that come in. I can say property taxes is the big increase in the blue highlighted bar there, 417,000. And then you can see the half-cent sales tax in the yellow bar, a decrease of almost 125,000. It's an estimate. Revenue sharing, a $67,000 decrease. So for those top 10 revenues, an increase of 379,000, which is mostly the property taxes. This seems to be, everybody likes this graph every year, so I put it in here again. It's as far as how the property taxes is developed. It's these three main items. It's a millage rate, which is in the top left graph. There's been no millage increase since 2011, just decreases from 5.45 to 5.37. And then the graph to the right of that is the taxable values, which, as you probably know, the millage rate times the taxable values is the revenues that we get on the bottom graph. But from 2008 to 2013, taxable values went down 640 million during the term of the Great Recession. And then down below in the bottom graph for the revenues, I think we saw this graph earlier, but we went from 8.1 million of revenues in 2007, and we went down to 6.7, about a $1.5 million decrease from 2008 to 2013. So that shows you how the property taxes are made up, calculated. I guess more property tax, it's basically the same information, just, and this is page 51 of the executive summary if you're looking for it, but just showing where the 640 million was. The far left side is the taxable values. In the middle is the millage rate and the changes. And on the far right is the ad valorem tax revenues and the changes from year to year. Highlighted in green at the top up there is for this current year budget. We budgeted 10.3 million. 10,081,000 is in the general fund and 265,000 is in the CRA. General fund expenditures, top part of the graph, personnel services, highlighted in yellow, the main increase, 893,000, and that gets back to the health insurance increase, the paramedics, and the internal auditor. And then down below, as you can see and highlighted in yellow, personnel services are almost 75% of the general fund budget. 23% is operating services. I think just some verbiage I wanted to show here in trying to balance the general fund. It does not have any, the general fund does not have any annual rate increases like water and sewer to plan and fund for operating and capital expenditure. You know, the general fund depends heavily on the top 10 revenues mentioned on the previous slide. You know, if one or more of these top 10 revenues decreases, it really hampers the city's ability to provide the necessary operating capital needs. And as you can see on the previous slide, you know, our sales taxes are going to be a little challenged. And, you know, and then I'm not sure getting into next year or how long this goes on, you know, will I get into our property taxes for fiscal year 2022? So the only revenue city controls is the property tax, you know, and some other smaller fees, you know, for charges for services for recreation and cultural. And just an example, you know, they decreased the millage rate from 5.42 to 5.37 last year. That's just for your own information, that's a loss of $95,000 annually. I would like to have that back, maybe. A little talk on the CRA. Not sure if anybody knows, you know, what the CRA, that's why I probably just go over it just briefly. It's created under Florida statutes with the city and county approving it. It's established in 2001, expires in 30 years. Area is approximately alternate 19 from Mears to the Sponge Docks, and in parts it's 1 to 2 blocks off of that alternate 19 from Mears to the Sponge Docks. The base year for taxable value calculations is the $41,037,900. Any taxable values over the base year for city and county go into the CRA, and this is how the CRA gets their money for those tax values over that base year. It's called tax increment financing. And on this slide for the CRA, I just try to briefly show how it's calculated. And with this year, I've got the 2020 year of 89 million. I got the 4.5% the property appraiser's estimate, bringing it to 93 million. Minus the base year of 41 million leaves 52 million, times the city's millage rate of 5.37 gives a 265,000 that the city contributes. And if you go to the right, same thing, the 2020 89 million, the 93 million, the base year, and then at the county's millage rate of 5.35, and the county pays to the city. We send them an invoice, and then they pay us the 265,000 that they've received. So those are the two main revenues of the CRA fund. As I mentioned above, there's been a couple land sales over the years from land in the CRA, but I say just a couple. Getting into the water and sewer fund, you know, with a budget of 18.8 million. That's a $1.3 million decrease from the previous year, or 6.53%. And as mentioned earlier, the main reason was we had a couple larger capital items last year with Seabreeze Drive and some new water wells. The water sewer fund budget, the main revenues, water sales, 9.6 million projected, sewer sales, 6.6, reclaim 398,000 for a total of almost 16.8 million. Those three items are 89% of the revenues. And like, as mentioned earlier, the rate increase is 2.75% for all those revenues. Just graphing the revenues another way, it's just showing charges for services, which are the water, sewer, sales, and reclaim. The dollar change 815,000 highlighted in yellow. And down below, they say that those charges for services are 93% of the water and sewer revenue budget. Water and sewer expenses, just breaking them down by personnel, operating capital, as you say, highlighted in yellow, there's that decrease of 1.8 million from those two large projects last year. We did have some increase in operating of 404,000, and that's mostly revolved on repairs and maintenance items and some operating supplies mostly for the water plant and the sewage treatment plant. And down on the bottom, you see a breakdown, pretty even, but personnel services 31%, then operating 25%, and capital is 25% of the water and sewer fund budget. Little sanitation fund, third largest fund with 5.4 million. It's 6.2 million, $830,000 increase, 15.32%. Mostly, as mentioned earlier, is the contract increase with waste management and the capital at the scale out there at the yard waste facility, the new scale, and relocating the scale. Sanitation fund revenues is sanitation fees 4.6 million, recycling fees 610,000, tipping fees 436,000 is budgeted. The rate increase for sanitation fees is 3.33%, recycling 1.63%. Those three revenues are 91% of the sanitation fund budget. The calculation for the 3.33%, I think mentioned earlier, is a CPI 1.63% plus the Pinellas County disposal increase of 1.7. The sanitation contractor, as you know, we don't pick up our own garbage. We contract out for solid waste and recycling from Waste Management. These are the estimated contractor payments we'll be making to them for the Waste Management. This current 2021 will be the last year of the 5-year agreement with Waste Management, and then they got to go out for bid. The yard waste is done by Florida Organics. Their contract is up February 2nd of 2023. So those are our contractor expenses of 4.6 million in the sanitation fund. Stormwater fund, fifth largest fund with a budget of 1.8 million. As mentioned earlier, the rate for equivalent stormwater unit is going to 8.65, and it's approved in the resolutions for multi-years, a 50 cents a year increase. I always like to try what revenue opportunities are out there. Well, from what I've heard, the building permit fees are the lowest in the county. You know, street lights, just so you know, the general fund absorbs the whole cost of street lights. You know, we don't pass that on to the residents. We always try to pursue all grant opportunities. Sometimes there's always talk of fire services fees, but sometimes that's not popular because a lot of times you mentioned that doing a fire service fee, usually people, they want to, and on the offset, they want to reduce the millage rate. So just to throw in here, I might have mentioned it earlier, if the city wanted to increase the millage rate, every 0.01 equals to about 19,000. So if they increase the millage rate from 5.37 to 5.42, it would equate to about $95,000 of more revenues. The budget timetable going forward is, you know, we're a little behind. We usually would probably be about now maybe wrapping up all our department meetings, but due to the COVID and the pandemic, we just got pushed back. So we'll probably be doing the budget advisory meetings with the departments in June. I guess whenever you depend, if you all want to do them on Thursdays. July 1st, the property appraiser has the certified taxable values. July 20th, we'll have the proposed budget to the City Commission. July 28th, the City Commission will establish the maximum millage rate. That's required by state statutes. July 30th, this is just tentative, maybe the first budget workshop by the Board of Commissioners. August 6th, just tentative, I threw it in there if they want to have a second budget workshop. And then the first public hearing on the tentative millage and budget would be September 3rd, and then the second and final public hearing on September 15th. And just for the budget advisory committee, I just put in some notes here that I set the meetings with the departments. I just, you know, I'm just going out to you all. Is there anything you would like to request from departments in their presentations? And I just threw this in there, you know, if we can help you all make your job easier, is there any other information we can provide for you all? And I am done. Hopefully that was understandable.
Thank you, Ron. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Only question I is just to confirm. So as of now, the amount from the unassigned fund balance, because that's kind of been my thing for about 12 years, is we're using just under $500,000, correct?
Not for the budget we're working on. For the previous, for this current year, I estimated it will probably go down. I had a slide.
No problem. I thought I caught it, but I wasn't sure.
I think you're right.
Yeah. for the current year.
Okay.
It's an estimate, but this is the current year we're in.
Okay, so 405. And was there any projections for the future years? I think you had your graphs.
Well, I didn't put in one for 2000, for so far in the budget, I'm not using any unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so this is for the previous year you're talking about for 2019?
Yeah, this slide is the current.
Oh, okay. So in 2019, for the previous budget, we ended up using about 400,000, correct?
Well, this is the current year, through the current year we're in through September 30th, 2020. Just estimating, projecting that.
Oh, I see okay, I got you. Okay, I got you. Okay. So for the current year, we're going to be at about 400,000 then, correct?
Correct.
And then you don't have it used at all for the future year for the upcoming budget?
Correct.
I would assume it will be though. Don't you think you're going to have to use some of it?
We might have to. We're leaving it out there. We don't have any pay increases in the budget.
Okay.
We've had, budgets have done a pretty darn good job. They've gone through and really cut a bunch of stuff, and there's not much capital in the general fund budget.
Okay.
So it might be a bare bones budget that's being presented to you.
Understood. And obviously that's going to be the commissioner's discretion.
Yeah.
I was on this committee, I think 2011 until I got elected in 2013. So I see how good the city can do during a downturn, and I have all faith that we can do it again. And I think this just shows the importance of the unassigned fund balance and keeping it healthy. No one predicted back in December we'd have a pandemic and be in this situation. So I'm very proud of the city, of the employees, the current commissioners and past ones that have preserved this unassigned fund balance. So in case we have to tap into it a bit in the coming years, we can, and that's the purpose of it, is to help in downturns. So as far as what we'd like to hear from all the department heads is just maybe some of their personal predictions for some challenges that their departments could face because of COVID and what's happened. So, anything that we can maybe do to help them in that. We have a lot of brain power, far better than me on this board. So I think that the department heads should really utilize it as far as, have some challenges ready to talk to us about that they might be facing, and then how we can help them. So, but, as far as the financial security of the city, I have full faith in what you are doing. So thank you, Ron, for that detailed presentation. Thanks. Anybody else? See if I can see you. It's hard on the Zoom thing. How do I get out of this presentation mode where I can see people that want to talk? Or
I could stop the share thing here.
Okay, because I'm kind of low tech these days. Forgive me. So.
Oh, I'm even lower than that.
Which is embarrassing for me. So, anybody else have questions at all?
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah,
Ron. Susan, go ahead now.
Okay, Ron, I think I read in one of the myriad of emails and presentations you sent that the police and fire contract increases are not in the budget yet?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any idea how much that's going to be that we'll have to add to expense?
No, I think they just started renegotiating their contracts, so they're just starting out.
Okay.
Ron, quick question. Health and dental benefits, you have up 10%. I'm going to lay you a side wager that it's going to be down the 400,000 instead of up 400,000. Just where do we stand on that going out to get competitive bids?
That is pretty close to going out. They're getting the package ready now.
Okay. Just to throw out one point, I know I made it several months ago. Ask them when we're going out separately what they're able to do over the next, and you pick the time frame, 3 years, 5 years. They might come back and say nothing, we won't give you a commitment, but now's a good time to ask when you're asking for a big package. Because what you're trying to do, you're trying to reduce the cost, not only in the current year, but maintain it or reduce it over the next few years. They won't give you a 10-year commitment, but I'm just talking about ask separately what they will commit over the next 3 or 5 years. Just see what they say.
Okay, no, we can know that.
But that's a big money item.
It is, it's $4 million.
And I'll bet something that hasn't been bid out for, I don't know how long. We talked last time, 10 years. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I just have the feeling, and that's why I'm going to bet you in the nickel, that it's going to come in 400,000 less than this year.
I hope you're right.
I do too.
Thank you, Claire. Is that all from you, Claire? You good? Okay. Anybody else? No more comments? Okay. We'll go to public comments. Do we have anybody? No, we don't have. I don't think they can come in and say, I have no clue how this works. So, okay. No public comments.
No raised hands at this time.
No raised. That's what it's called. Raised hands. Thank you. All right. Staff comments. A city manager.
Obviously, it's a challenge, but the good news in this challenge, I guess it's good news. It's not good for Ron and I and a lot of staff, but we've been through this before. Obviously, the first time we went through this, I was just become city manager, but we've been through this before. Most of the people here, so we knew what we had to do as soon as this thing hit. Although we'd like to forget that run in the early decade ago, we'd like to forget those times because those were lean budget years. I think we were ready. And again, our attempt is to bring it in and still not have any cuts or anything in service as much as possible, and try to preserve as much as the reserve that we can, and just weather the storm and then pick up like we picked up the last time something like this happened.
Thank you, Mark. I do agree with that. A chief.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, Deputy City Clerk.
No comment.
No comments. Ron, are you good after that presentation? Any more comments?
No, I just don't. Do you all need anything from me that might make your job easier? Or do you want to start thinking, do you all want to start meeting on the next Thursdays with the departments? A couple questions there.
So that's like last year where I think we met like initially around this time of the year was our first meeting with this board, and we started doing weekly. I mean, I'm fine doing weekly. I'm out the last 10 days of June in Georgia, but I mean, I'm ready to start meeting weekly if that's good with the board.
I'm fine.
With that?
Yes. I thought those individual presentations were a key. Not only did the department heads talk about what's going on, but to have them address their numbers. That's the one thing. If you said ask for the improvement, I would make sure all the department heads addressed the numbers. They probably 80-85% did. The remainder just wanted you to look at the numbers. I want to make sure they're comfortable with them going into detail.
Okay, very good. Well, we can start that next Thursday if that works with you, Ron, Mark, and Michelle.
That works.
That works with y'all.
It would be
Okay.
June 4th.
Yep, and I guess you can send out an agenda on Monday or so or tomorrow, and we can go from there.
Mr. Ron, can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you provide us with a breakdown of the leases and the copiers and what it is per copy? Because I see in when I look through the expense book, it's listed a lot, and I just want to see what the breakdown is per copy and everything, and how often those leases are sent out for contract and things to that nature.
Yeah, we can get that. And I think we started working on that because you asked a little bit.
It's just there's so much in every single department.
Yeah, and on that one, On that one new handout, the third one I gave you is new this year. There's one report that I think just deals with the printer copying costs.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
So your next meeting is going to be June 4th at 2 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the city manager will get with which departments will be presenting.
Correct. I do figure that you all would have that for us, by Monday or so. And then if anyone had any additional items they did not think of today, we can add those in at that time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other commentary or questions or items for the next agenda?
Nope.
Nobody? Okay. All right. We will adjourn at 3:03 p.m. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.